Cyber harmony. What does cyber harmony mean? Cyber harmony means getting everyone who's a stakeholder and can potentially touch your built environment on the same page when it comes to best practices, owner's project requirements. I mean, connecting the dots from the AE firm all the way down to the commissioning agent. In order for us to do that, we need cyber harmony within our industry, right? Some of the things that they just talked about apply to what we're going to talk about. If you need a business case for getting funding for some of the OT, let's say OT inspired or OT challenges that you have out there, and you want to, let's just say, implement network monitoring for OT, right? Well, your organization understanding how cyber integrates into the construction industry, right, or the construction process is one of the first steps, right? You can begin to change the culture when everyone's on the same page and we have cyber harmony within our industry. Well, first of all, I'd like to challenge every commercial real estate owner and organization in here to first address the conflict, or not even conflict, but the relationship between IT and your construction division or IT and your facilities group, right? So I think it's important to follow some type of cyber model, cyber maturity model, or an OT cyber maturity model so that you can put together an OT team or an OT governance team who can create owner's project requirements for the cyber side that gets handed off to the architect / engineer so they can end up in these specifications. Because at the end of the day, when a project starts, the AE firm ends up being your trusted advisor, right? But cyber is something that most firms are not too familiar with. You know, they're an exception. There are a few other firms that are an exception, but there's a lot of firms out there who aren't familiar with cyber or aren't even familiar with Division 25 and aren't using Division 25 yet. So I challenge you to hand off a set of owner's project requirements because you know how you want these vendors to operate within your built environment. You have the policies, the procedures, the best practices, and all of that. So a high-level document gets passed off to an A&E firm so that you can follow your document and make sure that it's embedded in the specification and that it's being adhered to through design, construction, and commissioning. One of the things that we found also is the stronger your set of documents as an AE firm, right, the better off you are to delivering what the owner wants, if the owner has someone participating in the construction process, right? So one of the things that we introduced to the marketplace is a systems integration drawing, right? Now most of you have seen systems architecture drawings, but systems integration drawing goes from how your web supervisor is being deployed, your firewalls, your routers, VPN devices, the fiber network itself, all the switches, all the way down to the sub-networks, right? And you point every division that's involved in that integration back to that systems integration drawing so there's no doubt that they should be participating and turning over documentation to the MSI, right? And that drawing came from me polling some of the largest systems integrators in the Midwest. And I just simply sent them a drawing and said, hey, if you got this drawing with a one-page narrative of what the scope was, would you bid this job? And they all looked at it and resounding yes. They all said, oh, definitely bid this job. We've got 90% of it figured out just from this drawing and a one-page narrative. Now, the nuts and bolts get embedded into the specification, but like Fano said, just like Fred said, you need the owner's participation at the end of the day.
You need more than the owner's participation, and Fred, I'll let you go in a moment, but I think the critical thing is, as owners, operators, developers, you need somebody from your team embedded in the job early in design that will follow it all the way through.
Yeah.
If you don't have the resources for that, get them. You're building buildings. Like, it's incredibly important that you take ownership of this and employ resources that have the skill set to understand and manage this throughout the process.
So if I'm a systems integrator, it kind of goes back to what you were just talking about as far as owners purchasing or approving the products that they want when it comes to OT. If I'm a systems integrator and I bid on that project, I want to install the technology that my installation team is most efficient at, right? Because their cost is on the labor side, or their bottom line, or where they make their money is on the labor side. The devices typically are a small portion of the overall controls project. So being very specific as to what you want and making sure you're very specific as to the approved systems integrators that are bidding on your job. And all of those things come from your owner's project requirements and your internal OT team.
Okay, so before I became the evil consultant, I was the evil integrator. That's a really good point. I remember, in fact, my old boss is here somewhere. When I worked for a mechanical contractor in Atlanta, we were the integrators. We put in, you would call us, and this is what we would get. We'd get the sequences of operations, riser diagrams, we'd get, and put in manufacturer X, whatever it happened to be. And to your point, is we would push whichever manufacturer that our programmers were the most proficient in, if they didn't tell us what. And then beyond the fact that you told me to put in your building and follow the sequence of operations, I did whatever I wanted to.
Right.
And that meant when I pulled it out of the box, I left all the default settings. I put in a username and password that all 357 of our current guys and 1,000 ones that had left before knew the username and password to. So the reason I'm bringing this up is we've been talking about this in RealComm for, Jim said, 10 years. The integrators, our goal was to make money. And our goal was not to change until the end user made us change. So that's something else you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to realize you've got a culture you have to help change. The reality is the asset owner, the person who's responsible, has got to make the determination for what they're going to allow to go in their building, how it's going to go into their building, and then responsible for going back and making sure that it was put in the way that they did it. So at the end of the day, like it or not,
I'm responsible.
Yeah.
It's true, and I think that's one critical thing to take away for anybody in here who's an owner, manager, developer. You're ultimately responsible. It's fun and easy to say we're passing off responsibility and risk to the general contractor, or we're passing off risk to the architect, or we're passing off risk through contractual language to others, but you end up owning it anyway, because you're ultimately the owner of the asset, so it's absolutely critical.
That works with chilled water systems, but not cyber.
Right.
Like Fano said, make sure that if you hire a commissioning agent, that you don't let the general contractor hire you, because I ran my own small commissioning firm for years, and when a general contractor hires a commissioning firm, he's working for the general contractor and not on the owner's behalf. So that process is going to be massaged to please the owner, right? Because we go back to what everyone's incentive is.
They want the next job, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, so that's your customer, and that's who you're beholden to. So make sure that you have a strong set of owner's project requirements. Make sure that you assign a team member through the entire process, and make sure that you hire a third-party commissioning agent direct to the owner. So you hold that contract, so they're working for you and their deliverable is to you.
That's fantastic. We'll end with one more note. Consider cybersecurity best practices, penetration tests, various other forms of testing and vulnerability assessments as part of the construction program at the end, so that you can have a clean bill of health when it's handed over. So if you can take anything away, don't trust anybody.
Right, and you are the primary stakeholder.
You are the primary stakeholder. Don't trust anyone. Review, re-review again. Divide up the job. Make sure incentives are aligned early, followed all the way through to commissioning. And hire Fred because he's the best. So there you go.